Alrighty, we're going to keep on creating some shapes here. So in this one, we're going to kind of focus on using a couple of different tools and techniques in Fusion 360. First, we're going to start to draw using the circular tool, right? This third shape that we see here, it's got some parts that are created in circles or parts that make up like kind of half a circle like you see on the bottom there. So we're going to learn how to sketch using the circular tool and how to fully constrain everything. But what we're also going to do is kind of make our lives a little easier, and we are going to use what's called the mirror tool. Now, what this is really useful for, if you see an object that is perfectly symmetrical, like we see if we look at this, that what's happening on one side of the object is exactly the same as the other side, what we can use is that mirror tool to essentially only create half of our object and then instantly just mirror everything over to the other side, which saves us a lot of time and effort and still gets us the exact right part that we're looking for. Which whenever you're 3D modeling, if you could find little ways to make your designing easier but still get the right outcome, that's always a good thing to be on the lookout for. And using that mirror tool is a great way to kind of get things started. So to start this, we're going to start the same way that we have been. We're going to start by creating a sketch and creating it on the top plane yet again. Okay, so I'm going to click on that top plane. And now I'm going to actually start with a circle. Okay, so I'm going to start by kind of modeling that circular bit that we can see looking down from the top. Okay, so if I start with a circle, and I could also just press the C key on my keyboard to start highlighting and drawing a circle. So I'm going to press C, and then we're good to go. If I press C, I'm going to again go to my origin, click right at the center of the origin, and then you'll see my circle kind of expands out from that. And what the dimension is that it's giving us is the diameter of the circle. So from one edge to the other, that's what we're measuring. Okay, so this outer circle here, we see that it has a diameter of 80 millimeters. So we'll type that and then click enter, and then we are good to go with that. Okay, the next smallest circle that we see is kind of like the inner portion of that little top ring there. Okay, and that circle has a diameter of 60 millimeters. So we'll draw another circle starting from the origin, and we'll make that one 60 millimeters. Okay, and then there's one final little circle in the center there. That's the hole that's going to go all the way through. So we'll click on that and then make this one 30 millimeters. Okay, now what I want to do is I kind of want to draw the rectangle for this right side of my shape here. Okay, if I were looking down, I would see it kind of looks like a big rectangle encompassing these three circles. But I'm only going to draw half of that rectangle, and you'll see why in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to start by just grabbing my rectangular tool, and I'm going to kind of go and just try to be kind of at the top here of this circle. Click that, and then just kind of drag it out to be some random shape. Okay, we're going to come back and add what are called constraints to make this exactly how we want it to be. Okay, first thing, I want this line of my rectangle to be directly at the center of my part there. And what that'll do is that'll help me when I go back and try to use the mirroring tool. So I'm going to go ahead and click on what's called my coincident tool. So I've kind of alluded to this little constraints menu in the past, and today we are going to start using that constraints menu. So if I click on my coincident tool, that will take a point or a line and snap it to some other point that you need it to. Right? So if I click on coincident and then click on this line, I want it to be directly in line with my origin there. I want my origin to be touching this line that I just drew. So I'm going to click on the line and then click on my origin, and you'll see that it snaps it right there. Okay, next thing I want is if I zoom way in here, you'll see that there's a tiny little gap in between this rectangle and the outermost circle. Okay, I want those two circles to be completely in line with each other, or I want this line to be what's called a tangent with this circle. Okay, so I can use my tangent constraint. So if I click on that, and then I click on this line and this circle, if I zoom way in, this line is perfectly tangent with that circle. So I'm going to do the same thing with the top there. Okay, and now that I've done that, you'll see that these two lines are now both fully constrained. The only thing that I need is I need to give a dimension from this edge of the circle to the very center. Okay? So the entire thing, if we're looking at that shape there, we see that the entire length of our part is 80 plus 20 plus 20, so 120. So I want just half of this, so I want this dimension from this line to the center to be 60. Okay, and that is that. So that's all that I can see from the top view right now. So I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch. Okay, and I'm going to start to extrude this. Okay, this center part of the circle is a hole. So I actually don't have to do anything there because I want to keep this as negative geometry or just empty space. However, I do need to start extruding up this portion of my part and also this portion of my part. Okay, so I'm going to start with just this one here, with the far outside edge of it. Okay, so looking at the drawing, I see that this has a thickness of 15 millimeters. So we'll go ahead and we'll go up by 15. Okay, my sketch went away, so I'll go ahead and reveal it again. Okay, and then this next portion, similar to that first object that we did, we got to figure out, okay, so from the bottom of the lip up is 20, and then from here to here is 15. So we could use our little fusion calculator again and do 15 plus 20 to get 35, which is exactly what we need. Okay, so now going from the top, we could do this a couple of different ways. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude one more time and then extrude this last little inner circle that we need. Okay, and we see from the picture that if we were to go from the top of this lip, we want this to go 15 down from the top of that lip. So I'll go ahead and I'll click this, and now we already know that the top of this is 35. Fusion just told us that, so we'll go 35, and now we can actually subtract using our little fusion calculator. We can subtract 15. Okay, so now we've got half of our shape. And again, that's actually intentional. We want to leave this as just half of our shape for right now. And then at the very end, we're going to come back in and use that mirror tool to really round everything off. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll hide this sketch for now. And what I can do is I can go back and create another sketch on the side face, similar to how we did on that second shape. So I'm going to create a sketch. I am going to click on my side face there. And again, I'm going to be referencing the top of this little shape that we've already drawn in my sketch. You'll see that if you look at the picture there, we need to draw a circle that from the center of that circle goes to the top of this lip is 50 millimeters. But in order to do that, we have to use our projection tool again. So we'll go ahead and create a projection. So we'll press P to create a projection. And then we will click on that rectangle. That's all that we need to click on, and we'll click OK. So now if I come back, I can draw a couple more circles. Okay, I'm going to start by drawing my bigger one that goes kind of in line with this rectangle that we already have. So that one, if we were to do that, we actually need to draw another circle that's 80 millimeters. Okay, and then you'll see that right now, this circle is still not constrained because we need to give it that height from the top of the lip down to the center. So we'll go ahead and we'll dimension that. And this time, we actually don't want to start this circle from the origin. Usually we've been starting our sketches from the origin, but this sketch does not live at the same place as the origin does. It lives slightly below it. But we will give that our dimension of 50 millimeters. And you'll see that it's still kind of not in line. And what we have to do, or not constrained, excuse me. So what we could do is we can kind of take this circle and we can move it to figure out how it's not constrained. So you'll see no matter what, I can't move it up and down, but I can move it side to side, which means that I need to make sure that the center of my circle does actually stay in line with my origin there. Okay? In order to do this, I can use the horizontal and vertical constraint. So if I click on this center of my circle, click on the horizontal and vertical constraint, and then click on my origin, now you'll see they snap to each other and they go exactly where it needs to go. Okay? Now I want to draw a couple of lines that stem from the top of this lip, and then they go to be tangent with my circle. Now you'll see if you click there, you can kind of drag the line down a little bit, and once you get close to the circle, eventually you'll see the tangent symbol kind of pop up. You'll see it look like a circle with a line kind of right at the top of it. That means that Fusion will automatically apply that tangent constraint for you. So you go ahead and click there to apply the constraint, and then do the same thing over here. Go down until we find our tangent constraint, and now we have those two lines already fully constrained for us. We didn't have to do anything else. And the last thing that we need is just this circle going through the center there, that 32 millimeter circle. So if we click on the center of the circle that we already drew, and then we draw, or we type 32 into our dialog box, that is just about everything that we need for our shape. So we'll go ahead and click on Finish Sketch. We could take this sketch that we drew and we could extrude it out the 20 that is needed in order to complete that geometry. So we'll go ahead and click on Extrude. And we're going to have to click on the shape a couple of times. We're going to have to click on this portion of the shape, this portion of the shape, and this portion of the shape. Because what Fusion does is it automatically looks for any shape that's closed to keep that in your extrusion. If you want more, you're going to have to click on those additional closed shapes. Okay? And right now you'll notice that you see this little arrow. This arrow tells us that if we type in 20 millimeters, it's going to actually go the wrong direction. So you'll see that if we were to type 20, it doesn't go the direction that we need it to. We need this to go back into our part. So what we can do is we can, similar to how we cut away material last time, we just want to make that a negative number. And now you'll see, even though it's negative, it does add the geometry. It just changes the direction. Okay, so what the negative does is it just changes the direction of the Fusion operation. So we'll go ahead and do -20 and then click OK. All right, so we are just about there, okay? We have now exactly half of our shape. And as I mentioned before, we want to go in and use that mirror tool to really kind of complete our shape and kind of save us the time of having to do all of those steps additionally on that backside. So what we can do is we can come up here into Create and then go down here to Mirror. Okay, all the way down in that Create menu, you'll see this mirror option. Okay, and what we want to do, we want to imagine that we are taking this and essentially slapping a mirror right on this side of the object, this far kind of spot right here where all of these circles have that line going straight through the middle of it. So what we could do is in this menu, we can select Objects and then the Mirror Plane. The object that we want to mirror is the thing that we already have created. And then the mirror plane, we just want to select this face of our object. So you'll see that if we select this face, it kind of creates that partial pattern of the shape that we want. And once we click OK, you'll see that now, just like magic, we have our fully completed shape. So this is why anything that is completely symmetrical is very, very useful to use that mirror tool, because that just saved us a ton of time instead of having to extrude all of these parts out again and extrude this out to some other depth. We just did half of it and then mirrored it across some plane. So that is our third shape.